Hello and welcome to the North American Guitar Showroom in London. This is a very special talking guitar session. We are sat with a man that needs no introduction, but I'm going to introduce him anyway. This is Mr. Michael Bashkin. How you doing, Michael?
I'm doing very well.
We'll do another handshake.
All right.
Even though we've been hanging out for a few days.
Yes.
I saw you about a week ago at the Woodstock show.
Yeah, it's been a lot of travel.
It's been a lot of travel for you. We were talking earlier about how great the Woodstock show was and how you get that real sense of community, and how you quite rightly pointed out when we did that little chat by the beautiful stream, that you really get a sense that there is the finest builders in the world under one roof, and that I love the way you said this part of the guitar market is thriving. So how do you prepare for the shows? It must be quite nerve-wracking getting all the guitars ready and stuff like that.
It can be. There are some deadlines, but usually if I sign up for a show or I'm asked to do a show, it's anywhere from 6 months to a year in advance. Mm-hmm. So it gives me plenty of time to prepare, to try and make some spec guitars for the show, and contact customers in advance, let them know that I'll be there, and what I'll be bringing. So that's the type of prep work that goes into it. Yeah,
and you get to sort of meet existing customers and new customers at your table. But it's interesting because you were saying earlier that most often the client hasn't met you, so it's nice to put faces to names, and rather than just they would have heard about your brand or your instruments via the internet. So it's nice to connect.
Yeah, absolutely. Often. Players, collectors, they hear about builders through the internet, but it's not usually until they meet them face to face that you can form a certain connection, which is really solid, and they can learn about you and about your guitars. And a guitar is not the internet. You need to really play it and experience it. Yeah.
Well, we've had an interesting day here, which is I'm grateful that you've been able to see how intense it can be here with, we've got the masterful Mrs. Stuart Ryan tonight playing in our event, demonstrating your guitars, and he was here, so before the event starts and before we did this interview, it was like, quick Stuart, films the guitars. It's pretty, we have to do that level of filming and recording nowadays, just in order for people all over the world to hear how the guitar truly sounds, and in different genres of music, so that's really important. So I'm glad that you got to see that.
It was awesome. It was really, really nice. And one of the things that is a real treat about being guitar maker is not often enough, but when it happens, it's great to have one of your guitars in a true master's hands and hear them take it for a spin.
How does that feel? Because actually I said to Stuart, because obviously he is a master, and when he's playing, I said, do you mind if we all sat watching what's doing? He said, no, it's fine. But I was thinking it must be nerve-wracking for Stuart playing in front of you, but do you get a little nervous hearing somebody playing your instrument? Do you?
Sometimes, yeah, because what I want for them to experience is essentially no distractions from the music. That the guitar is set up right. Everything about it intonates well. It's that when they pick it up, it's just seamless. They can just take it and play it, and they're not fiddling around with the tuning or wishing that the action was a little different.
Yeah.
So once there's usually a couple measures into it, then I can tell that the guitar is fine for them, and they can just take off and go.
And when you're listening back to either video clips that we might have done here or live, like you did earlier on, do you, when you hear the guitar being played, is there this little voice in your head that goes, yeah, I got that one just how I wanted it?
You give me too much credit. It's always a treat, and but one of the things that drives me about my guitars and being a guitar maker is I always want the next guitar to be better than the last one. Yeah. And so whenever I'm listening to a guitar, I'm proud of what I've done, what I did, but I'm always thinking about next time, I'm going to tweak this or tweak that, and how can I make it even better.
You said the word drive there, and immediately I was taken back to when we were talking at your table at Woodstock, and that was the one thing you said, you do try to drive as much tone out of a set of wood as you possibly can. through your builds. It doesn't matter. So if it's a maple guitar, you're trying to sort of make it sound a bit bigger and sort of in the low end. So how do you go about doing that?
Well, I have a specific sound in my head every time I start a guitar, and sometimes it's voices and I try and quiet those down, but anyway, there's medication for that. But normally what I try and do is, when I'm starting a build and I'm choosing the woods and I'm, choosing the top and tapping and flexing, is I'm kind of generating, an audio sound in my head of what I want to do. And the whole time that I'm building that guitar, I'm trying to drive the guitar and guide it to that process. And often what that means, the woods may not be an exact match, but that's where the artistry of being a custom guitar maker comes in, is that you have to know your materials and how you can kind of tweak them and push them in certain directions. So that recently completed a maple guitar, and I wanted some aspects of the maple, but I also wanted the guitar to surprise you in a little bit, because I wanted to be like, wow, that's a maple guitar. So those are some of the things that I think about in terms of driving tone, and it's very instrument and customer specific when I do that.
I've played that guitar, and it actually, when you first start playing it, you don't immediately think it is a maple guitar. It's got so much more to it than that kind of tone that you have in your head that you would expect from maple. Yes, you did 2 degrees in forestry, and that's obviously you were a player beforehand. But do you find that knowing woods as well as you do, that when you went into guitar making, was there just this fascination of, I can't wait to hear what a rosewood's going to sound like, or what a maple's going to sound like? Or did you go there?
Yeah, there was, an extra layer for me, because I had come at woodworking really from a different angle, which was more of the research, management, ecology of forests and trees. And so I never really thought about, this tree would make a great guitar until I started guitar building.
Yeah.
But, I had been working with trees professionally for years before I started. So, and there was a few instances where I kind of kicked myself, because there were points in retrospect where I had absolutely fantastic guitar wood in my hand. I just didn't know it because I wasn't building guitars yet.
Tell us what that was. What would that have been?
Spruce. Right. Yeah, definitely spruce. So I'm from the Rocky Mountains in Colorado in the U.S., and there's some really fine Engelmann spruce that grows there.
Yeah, but you tend to. I mean, I know that the 3 instruments that we've brought in, we've chosen to go with Carpathian Spruce, which was your preference. Any reason why you wanted to go for these builds?
Yeah, well, I just really like Carpathian Spruce. What it does, it has quite a few attributes of, I find, Adirondack spruce, but it's not quite as dense. It can be a little bit more open sounding, and it's really easy to get very, very good quality Carpathian spruce. And Adirondack, you can still get good quality, but it's not quite as easy. The supply isn't as good. Yeah.
So, question, sort of like the Desert Island discs. If you could build one last guitar that you would take to the Desert Island, what would it be?
I'm going to have to give a fairly stock answer, and I'd have to say it would be a spruce Brazilian rosewood guitar.
Oh, nice. So. Yeah, I've yet to play. Actually, that's not true. The first ever guitar, when we were forming, you don't know this, when we were forming the North American guitar, when we were sat writing the name and with the designer designing the logo, we had excuse the elephants again. We had the Great Wave with us.
Oh yeah.
And we were playing the guitar, and we were talking about what we wanted the company to be. So you were right in the DNA of the.
Oh, that's nice to hear. That one was an Adirondack with Brazilian back and sides, and had a fantastic inlay on the headstock that was done by Jimmy Wingert.
Yeah, the inlay on that.
I won't take credit for that. So.
But yes, obviously we're not able to get Brazilian rosewood new Brazilian rosewood guitars
Mm-hmm.
Into the UK. So I'm quite envious of what that would be like now. A new Bashkin in Adirondack and Brazilian rosewood. Tempted just to order one just so that you can send me some pictures. And
Sure,
some
you can come visit it anytime.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And so we've got our event this evening.
Mm-hmm.
It's quite fascinating to me because I can't believe that this is the first time that you're in London, with such a well-known name within our community. And I know that the reaction to the event that we put on this evening has been unbelievable. With regards to the RSVP, do you ever get a little bit nervous doing Q&As or anything like that?
No, a beer or a glass of champagne always helps. Yeah. But yes, thank you. So, no, I'm quite excited, and when you told me that the response to the event was really good, and it should be a good turnout, and I'm looking forward to meeting people who are interested in not just my guitars, but just any handcrafted guitar.
It's so that connection with meeting a luthier for the first time, and I get this from so many of our clients. In fact, Peter Swanson, who was at Woodstock with us, he was saying it's so lovely to meet the person that's going to build this guitar for you, rather than just, like you're saying, chatting on the internet.
Yeah, well, that's the interesting thing about the handcrafted guitar market, because to some people who buy guitars, they want a known quantity of finished guitar, and they would come to a place like this. But there's something else that's available in the handcrafted guitar market, and that's just the experience of working with the builder and talking about tone and watching the guitar being created. And that's that's something that is not widely available in the market today. Yeah,
in fact, that was the thing the bug that bit my father when he was having his first guitar built, which was a guitar from Brent McElroy.
Yeah,
and he got a picture of the set of wood, and then every sort of couple of weeks there'd be and he was just like, "This is incredible." And yeah, absolutely, it's romantic. That, and then getting that instrument in your hands and then playing it, because there's so much trust that it's a very emotional purchase, and there's so much trust that has to go from a customer to use. It must be quite a big responsibility on your shoulders.
It is, yeah. There are, well, of course, you want to build the absolute best guitar that you can, but one difficulty in ordering a guitar, and most well-known guitar makers can be several years out by the time they deliver guitars, but it's hard to talk about tone, and that's why I enjoy meeting potential customers at shows, is because we can play the same exact guitar, and at least we have a basis upon which to carry on further conversations of tone, because we can say, remember that guitar in the low end or the mids or the highs, rather than just saying, I want thick trebles, because that means different things to different people. So that's kind of one of the things that guitar makers have to learn how to negotiate and deal with. Yeah. So
it's very similar to when you have mixed a record, and then a radio plugger hears it, and they go, just needs to be beefier.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
That's making me hungry, though.
Yeah, exactly. And I have one last question, which is something that I've been quite obsessed with since we started working with each other, is your fretting. The frets on your instruments are absolutely, there's no other words to describe them other than perfect. And you very kindly invited me out to Bashkin HQ to see how you do it. Was that a process that that must have taken a long time to really master, and must take a long time to implement?
Yes, and what you're referring to is known as hemispherical fret ends, and it's how the very ends of the frets are dressed out. And I believe in giving credit where credit's due. It's not my original idea. I believe that belongs to either Fred Carlson or Harry Fleischman, who I got it from. But essentially, rather than just beveling the end of the frets, you put a quarter sphere on them. The technique that you have to use in order to achieve that really kind of changes from traditional fretwork, in that the frets ends and the lengths have to be perfectly dressed when you put the frets in, and then once you put the frets in, there shouldn't be very minimal leveling and dressing, so your fretwork has to be just absolutely spot on. And something in addition to building guitars, I also do repair work, so I've done a lot of refretting on multiple different kind of instruments, and that's allowed me to develop a pretty deep toolkit in terms of how I fret, and it adds hours to a fret job, but I think it's a nice touch for a nice guitar.
Yeah, it was lovely seeing Stuart playing. I think it was the SJ, and it was immediately like, whoa, it's just a great reaction to have when I think he was describing it like it was a Ferrari.
Yeah, that's a good description. So.
Michael, as always, it's such an honour to represent you and your phenomenal instruments, and just so wonderful to have you here on the sofa, and I cannot wait to have more of your instruments coming into the North American Guitar, and also for a knockout event tonight.
Yes, well, thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right, then.
So, for more information on the finest hand-built luthier instruments, then please do subscribe to this channel. But for more information on Mr. Michael Bashkin, please do get in touch.